Hello everybody, welcome to the Northern Film Review. This week we are going to be reviewing the fantastic French film, Raw. Very sort of weird, very funky, very odd, all sort of, horror themed special. So yeah, hope you enjoy. The Northern Film Review, with your hosts, Oliver Ellis and Luke Simpson. Hello, Luke. How are you?
I'm alright. Very tired.
Yeah, I am also tired. I'm also... this is the second time we're recording this. Is it not?
It is indeed.
We were sort of... there was a kerfuffle about the booking, and we were unsure. And we went to go downstairs. And
I got walk and go, so I am...
And I got my blood pressure taken, which is
He's
a bit
not
odd.
ill, don't worry. He was doing it for
No,
his study.
they were doing this thing downstairs where these medical students were doing like a big survey of people's blood pressures, which is to reach their own. But yeah, so we are going to be doing Raw, which is this French film, and we wanted to do Titani or Titani or something like that. However you pronounce it.
Yeah.
It's the film that won the Cannes most coveted prize. Can't remember what it's called. Cannes Selection Prize or something like that.
We talked about it when we were doing our Cannes review festival.
Yeah, and we really wanted to do that film because it seems quite interesting. By the way, this podcast is going to be filled with spoilers of Raw, and there's going to be some sort of
trigger warnings.
The trigger warnings for like graphic content and stuff like that. So if you're not into that, maybe
skip this one.
Skip this one. But yeah, so like we wanted to watch Titani, but it's not out in this country yet. You can't buy it anywhere. You can't sort of stream it anywhere. You can't go see it in the cinema because it's not just not out. And we really want to see that because there's an interesting sort of. I mean, I've watched sort of interviews with the director and sort of the actors and stuff. And there's quite an interesting scene in it where the main character has coitus with a car, and that's kind of how the film sort of starts. And I was like, well, that's weird. That's a weird way of doing it. And I was like, well...
Starting with a bang.
Yeah, and I was like, well, I really wanted to do this film, but let's... I wonder if the director has any other films that we could watch, because that seems like an interesting concept. I was wondering that sort of the progression that goes from there. And then I found that she made a short film, which I watched a little bit of, and I was like, well, this is a bit boring. I don't really get much from this, and I kind of like cut it way halfway through. And I was interested in sort of like, and I saw this other film, and you said that she had a TV pilot.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that seems interesting. But she had this other film called Raw, and it's sort of this horror film, and it's Halloween on Sunday.
Yeah.
It's not really a Halloween show, this, but it's sort of, we're filming it around that time.
I thought to do a horror film.
It's a horror, and it's sort of, on Google when you type in films, it's like horror film. But it's not really a horror film. Like The Lighthouse, when you look that up on Google, I think it comes up as a horror film.
Psychological thriller.
Yeah, it's more psychological thriller. And I was I was like, okay, I'll watch this. This film is on Amazon Prime. I'll give it a watch. And I was making my sort of like I was sort of running out of food, and I had sort of beef and some curry. I was like, okay, I'll have these stuff. I'll have this. And then I will, I'll make my beef curry. Bit weird. I think beef curries are always a bit weird, but it doesn't matter. And I was like, okay, let's have this. And I thought that was going to be exciting. And I was making this, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll put this film. And then they sort of so the general sort of like vibe of the film is that this girl is in veterinarian school, and she's sort of she becomes, spoilers by the way, she becomes sort of this cannibal, and she's sort of like, it starts out with her like eating some
a rabbit kidney.
A rabbit kidney, yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, it's a bit weird. A bit of a weird thing to watch. It started out with her eating rabbit kidney. I was like, okay, it's a bit weird. Why am I watching this? And then I sort of was like, okay, but I suppose I am technically eating meat, and what's the difference between a rabbit kidney and sort of beef? And then it got to trigger warning. There's sort of this hair scene. It's really horrible to sort of like It's basically she sort of like started mighty trigger warning for gross stuff here. She started throwing up hair, and that was
It's making all of us squeam a little bit.
yeah. I paused the film, and I had a little cry, and I was like, okay, this is. I'll eat my tea first, and I'll wash up my dishes, and I'll come back to this. And it's just it. This film is just. I mean, what are your thoughts on this film? Just general thoughts.
When I first watched it, I mean,
Yeah.
we both watched it around the same time last night. It was an experience. When I was watching it, I got a message from you saying, "This film!"
Yeah.
Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! It's like, oh god, what have I got myself into now? I found it. It's just, it gives me shivers thinking about it. It's gross out. It's body horror. It's just, it gives you the heebie-jeebies. Watching it, especially there's a scene, trigger warning.
Yeah.
Where she gets these rashes on her hands and she's like transforming.
Yeah.
She says, but like getting rashes everywhere, and like she's scratching herself viciously, and I could feel it being scratched on my because it's going that hard and nails going. It's, just it makes me feel a bit off really. So yeah, I think it was a really good film, and acting was amazing. Especially for the lead actress. She was 18 when she filmed that. So
Was she?
Yeah, she's only 23, so she's in Titany as well.
Is she?
Yeah, yeah.
Mad.
She's,
Okay.
So working with the same directors, working with the same actress, but yeah, 18-year-old being able to act in that sort of film, I think was brilliant. Music was amazing, really lovely music for such a gross out film. But yeah, it really, I think it was quite a cool not a cool concept, but the concept was that at the end you realise, spoiler warning, that their mum's a cannibal as well.
Yeah.
And that it's actually a hereditary gene that is that is cannibalism. So cannibalism is common in certain families.
In this world.
In this world, yeah, not in real life, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, it might be. I don't know.
Might be, we never know. But that their mum was trying to gatekeep her from eating meat, so she wouldn't get these urges to eat human meat.
Yeah.
And she was vegetarian until she went to university.
Well, they had this just the maddest sort of like ritual. I mean, I think because we're at university. And often you'll see with American films, I love like this sort of hazing initiation type things to get into sort of sororities and I can't remember what the male version of it's called. But it's sort of like that is hazing things where you get like hit with a bat or whatever.
Yeah.
And they had the craziest hazing. I mean, obviously this film is sort of surreal in nature, but the most unbelievable hazing I've ever seen in a film ever.
It started off with them getting, I think, pig's blood or some sort of blood thrown over their heads.
Well, it started out with all the sort of the people who are older throwing all their beds out.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Brilliant start.
What's going on here? And then they're made to eat sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then they were sort of, just all sorts of weird stuff going on. And there was sort of the scene where like they put paint on put yellow paint on all the females and blue paint on all the males, and then they would shove a male and a female together in a toilet and be like, come out when you're green. And that was very unpleasant. I think just there's so much about this film where I'm like, it's just so unpleasant. I was like, oh no. It's.
And I think that's what she kind of wanted as well, though. To make you feel uncomfortable watching it. I remember watching an interview, and there was this with her and the cast, and this woman was just being really rude and saying, "What is the film about? What is this film about? What's the premise of it?" Like kept cutting her off. She didn't even get to finish what she was about to say.
Yeah.
And she got really angry, and said, "Well," she said, "I think it's like the premise is what you want it to be. You make your own decision from watching this. Yes, it's gross out, but you make your own decision at the end of the day." But by the end of it, she walked out. It's quite funny.
It would. I mean, it's really not a film I think everyone should watch. It reminded me of Uncut Gems. So Uncut Gems is kind of like, you don't really get much enjoyment out of it. It's just a constant sort of anxiety swathe.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, okay. I mean, you feel bad watching it.
Yeah, there are films you should watch but never watch again.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should watch it, really watch it, because they're good films, but never watch it again because you don't want to put yourself through that. I want to say torture again, but you don't want to go through that experience again. I think it's worthwhile watching, but don't watch it again, and don't watch it at night when it was a bit. Or don't eat it whilst you were eating.
Yeah, really don't watch it when you're eating. It is sort of. I mean, there's other scenes as well which are just horrible.
I just hated that scratching scene. That really gave me the heebie-jeebies. Really.
It's just sort of. There's just so much stuff in it where I'm like, okay, this is just. Wow. I'm like, this is just so much right here. I'm just sort of watching just the most horrific thing I've ever seen in my life. And I think I suppose it's kind of what she wants. I mean, again, like we said, we wanted to review Titani.
I think we will one day when it's out.
One day, yeah. But it was sort of like, what interested me about that was sort of, it's this really interesting imagery, really interesting filmmaking, and it's so sort of like subversive to like what a film is. And I really got this from Raw, because it was sort of, it's just so not what I expected. Everything is just so like anti that or against that or anti-culture in sort of a weird, interesting way.
Yeah. It's like people get different ideas from what what actually the film is actually about.
Yeah.
But I saw again this YouTube video of her basically disagreeing with every. So people think it's a film about veganism and how people should become vegans. She disagreed about that. How it's a film about femininity or feminism or something like that. She disagreed about that. And I'll tell you what I got from it, and I'll tell you what other. I agree with some other people, some other YouTube critics, that it's about growing up, really, your body changing and stuff like that. It's she goes to university, she changes into this other woman or this other person. It's like going to university, you get dropped off at the gates and you're fending for yourself, basically, aren't you? And you turn into a different person at the end of the day. That's what other people think of it, and that's what I kind of think. You go through changes and stuff like that. She gets through a big change, like becoming cannibal. Yeah, but no one says cannibal when you go into university.
Yeah,
but you do go through changes at university. You become more mature. You become more self-reliant.
Well, I sort of agree to a certain degree about that sort of interpretation of the story, but I think perhaps one of the main things I got from it was I kind of saw it like I wouldn't imagine you've read this book, but the Outsider by Albert Camus. It's very much the sort of the feeling that you just don't fit into society and you're not really sure why, and it's kind of like it's kind of rationalizing the outsider, because the only outsider is this guy who doesn't really care so much that his mother's dead, and then he sort of kills this guy, and he's sort of like, I don't know why I'm here. What's going on?
I think I've read it in English. Maybe.
Yeah, you might have done.
About the Greasers and stuff like that.
The Greasers?
Oh, that's something completely different. I'm thinking of The Outsiders. That's what I'm thinking of. Maybe. Sorry, yeah.
And I also thought maybe you could sort of go, oh well, it's sort of pro vegetarianism or something like that, or like what's the difference between human meat and animal meat sort of stuff.
The genes.
Because just all the same stuff. Because there was a line in it where the girl was like, well, what's the difference between, and again, trigger warning here for sexual assault and rape, but like she was like, oh well, what's the difference between a monkey getting raped and a human getting raped, wouldn't the monkey still feel depressed? And there was like an argument about that. I was like, well, that was a really unusual scene, and I'm not sure how I felt about that. That was a bit weird. And yeah, I don't know. It's a weird film. I'm kind of like, I'm in two sort of sections about it, right? I'm like, is this a really good film because it's sort of subjecting the norm and it's just so sort of like out there and so sort of like, ugh. Or am I like, well, this person just really just made this horrible film that's just subjecting people to sort of horrible circumstances, you know?
Yeah, but if you make a gross out film like that and has a meaning at the end of the day, do you think they're just making it for the hell of it, or do you think they actually want to make it because they've got valid reasons for doing it? It's like apparently, like, I think in Saw, at the end of the day, it's a gross out film, but they have meanings at the end of it. Even though it's loose, like, very scraping the barrel.
But I think with something like Saw, the violence in it is so cartoonish.
Yes.
That I can't sort of relate to it in a way, and I'm like, well, this is, I really can't see the circumstance where I'm held in like this big
meat factory
by some sort of like doll with a giant obscure metal contraption around my head. I mean, it's kind of like, it's very difficult to agree. I mean, that might happen, but with sort of, and again, I'm not sort of an evil veterinarian cannibalist.
Yeah.
Who's off. I mean, this, like I said, it's surrealist, but it's sort of like the way it's done is so sort of like, I don't know. It feels real, and it also doesn't feel real. And I'm like, what is going on?
Do you think it felt like a snuff film in a way?
Yeah, in parts. And I'm like, well, this is just like the hair scene was just. I felt. I mean, I'm gonna remember that scene forever. It's just like it just felt so unnecessary.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because I think when we had Dan Moore and Marcel on, they made a short film where Dan, again, trigger warning for all the trigger warnings for all this thing. He had full frontal nudity of him masturbating on the film, and that was
out of nowhere.
It's interesting and out of nowhere. And I think often with filmmaking, you can imply stuff and have similar effects and not have to show your audience to it. Because I think often, and again, very much my sort of like idea of filmmaking is that you allude to stuff and don't address it directly. And you're constantly using other stuff to explain other stuff in sort of this abstract way. And that's kind of where the art comes from. So it's kind of like...
But people will also say that the art is actually within the gross outness as well. Exactly. So people think art is the shock factor of it. The shock factor of seeing someone masturbating in full frontal nudity or seeing someone chunder out hair. But
it's kind of like with the hair chunder thing. I'd like, I think there was sort of, connotations that could be had with it. But I just think, what was the meaning for showing the whole thing? Could you not have had like
holding on it for a long time?
A really long time. Yeah. It's sort of like unnecessary stuff in films. I see this with a film like Blue is the Warmest Colour, where they had this sort of like 7-minute long sex scene. And I think sex scenes, they show the intimacy between the couples or whatever. But like the length of it is drawn out.
Yeah.
And I think lots of sort of French cinema has very drawn out scenes that are very anti-Hollywood, sort of going off that sort of French New Wave.
Yeah.
But it's like it was too much for me, I think.
And it's actually going subverting, because you would think Raw is made by, not being stereotypical, but a guy, but it's actually not. It's actually made by a woman, and it's good to. I mean, it's good to see more women direction, because you don't normally see it, do you?
Well, I think
the French have actually been bringing up these new directors who are like Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Celine Sciamma,
and Mia Hansen-Love and people like that. And I think that is great. And I think what coming on to my next point is, I think the sort of the characters in this film, I think some of them were just sort of bold stereotypes, really, like the gay man, who was just sort of like, yeah, I'm gay, and that was a bit weird. But I think there was lots of characters within the film that are like, this is like, I think the main character is very well written.
Yeah,
and I think
really
the
well
sister
written.
character was very well written.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed this sort of dynamic. It was very unusual dynamic, because you're like, who's the bad guy here? I was constantly wondering, is like the younger sister the bad guy? Is the older sister the bad guy?
Well, people say the older sister's bad guy because, spoiler warning,
Yeah.
murdered someone.
Yeah, but that's sort of like,
Because she was jealous, wasn't she? Oh, there was.
yeah, but and again, like, you know, they sort of fought each other, and she was a bad sort of antagonist sort of type there, but it wasn't really sort of like, you know, she had redeeming parts of the film, and she was just doing lots of the sort of the same stuff that the young sister did, really, and it was all quite a bit weird, really, and yeah, there was just so much in this film, really, that was just very odd. It was such an odd film.
An odd film, but a good film at the same time. I did enjoy it, even though it sounded really weird to enjoy a film like that, but like parts of it were really good, and I wouldn't say it's my favourite film. I know I'm definitely not going to watch it again.
Yeah, I'll never
Definitely
watch
not
it
going to
again.
watch it again, but I'm glad I watched it in a way.
I'm glad I watched it, so I knew that there was films out there like that.
Yeah.
I think I got a lot from it's like, and again, making a comparison to Uncut Gems, I think the filmmaking within these films are very good, but they invoke a very different emotion to what normal films usually invoke in you. So you usually go, oh, I'll watch this romantic film to make me feel lovey and dovey and a little bit sad, and a little bit happy in the end. Bish bash bosh. But these sort of it's very hard to sort of get a film that is just a pure one emotion that isn't sadness or happiness made. So with sort of Uncut Gems, it's just, you feel pure anxiety, and with Raw, I felt sort of pure disgust, and I'm like, oh, don't do that. Oh, it's constant that, and it's constantly, because like, you know, like I said, lots of films will invoke just sadness, fear, happiness, right?
Yeah.
You know, you go Transformers, or it's excitement as well. Transformers invokes the feeling of happiness and sort of excitement. For sort of a film like The Pianist will invoke a feeling of sadness basically all the way through, because it's a sad film. The Babadook will make you feel sort of horror and
tense,
frightened. But like a film like Raw, it's an entirely different emotion I'm getting from that, and that's so interesting to see from a film, because it's just so unique and so different from the sort of the cult of like filmmaking.
In a way, you can feel on your body what she's doing as well. Like I like I mentioned earlier, I could feel some, like her scratching it, and I was like rubbing my arm, because I could kind of feel like, imagine that happening to me, just going right in, imagine chundering out hair and stuff like that. It's just, in a way, you can feel the film, not in an emotional way, in a physical way.
Yeah, it's just so sort of like visceral.
Yeah.
In the way it was made, I'm just watching all these scenes, and I'm like, what? Excuse me?
Excuse-moi.
And it was just sort of, it was so interesting, and I just sort of, it's just so many scenes in it that I'm just like, oh my god, that was just so, just unnecessary and weird, and just sort of this constant. I don't know. It is a bit of a weird film to sort of like capture all of my feelings on it in sort of a succinct way that I would feel is sort of necessary, but it's just sort of, you know, and I think it like I said, sort of like bridging on sort of like, because like French New Wave was very much a group of filmmakers, or sort of like a trend within French filmmaking within the sort of 70s and 80s of like people going against the Hollywood style.
Yeah.
And I think this very much is going against the Hollywood style in a very ambitious and sort of way. And I really love the visual style of it. I think it looked really good.
It was lovely, and it was beautifully shot, and also the soundtrack to it, the music behind it, very beautiful in a way. You know, it didn't really feel like a score that it would be in a horror film. Really, it's really not. You know what I mean? Like, it was really.
How did you feel about the music score?
I don't know. It mixed emotions. Really, it was. At points, it didn't feel like it was the right music to use, but it was at the same time. I just the music was amazing. That's what I'm trying to get from it. It was just a really beautiful score. And I think French. It sounds stupid, but I think French films do that really well though as well. Like for a score wise, like Amelie and stuff like that. That's a very notorious score, isn't it?
Yeah.
That one. That and Portrait of a Lady on Fire. That had a really beautiful score as well.
Yeah.
So I think they do it really well compared to these big budget Hans. I'm not saying Hans Zimmer. I love Hans Zimmer, but big billowy orchestral
Bit
music,
more
or
nuanced.
like let's say a horror film. Like I don't know. Let's go for Babadook. It's all these high pitched, screechy, horrorish, scratchy noises, and I didn't really hear that from Raw.
Yeah. I think it's just I don't think they'll ever. I can't really compare this film to anything really.
No, you can't.
There's not like a direct film which this is like.
She's getting her own unique. The director's making her own style in a way. Like from what we've heard from Tiffany, she's kind of keeping the same gross out thing from Raw. So she's kind of creating her own style in a way.
Yeah, it's kind of like how Quentin Tarantino has just basically an unreplicable style, and I think this director very much has that sort of unrecognizable.
Unrecognizable.
Well, you just can't replicate her style in sort of a really good way, and I think the closest I can think to of like style is the Safdie brothers, but that's like a real stretch. In sort of
like the Safdie brothers have their own style as well.
Yeah,
they can't really recreate. No one can really recreate it, and it's also the same as like you're saying. Each director has their own unique style. I can't remember his name. The guy who did the French Dispatch, the new one coming out, the Fantastic Mr. Fox, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head now. It's gonna bug me now.
Wes Anderson.
Wes Anderson, yes, his style is very unique.
Yeah,
very very unique and but like in his films he uses his style. But I don't think anyone can really recreate that style. I don't think anyone can recreate an Edgar Wright style. I think, but like with other films, it can be.
I suppose it's the hallmark of a very good visual director. I think.
Yeah.
One of who can't have their. One of whom who.
One who has their mark on a film.
Yeah, who sort of is very.
It's like when you turn the film on, you can say, "Oh, that's a Wes Anderson film" because of the visual style of it, or you can definitely tell it's an Edgar Wright film.
Oh god, I'm choking a bit there. Yeah, no, I agree. It's just a very unusual film. I think it's. I'll recommend this film to people. Would you recommend this film to someone?
I would recommend it to people, but only watch it once, because I would not. Yeah. Well, I say this definitely. You watch it, you'd never want to watch it again.
Yeah, I think very much. I would give people a warning about the film and be like, okay, this is kind of what happens in the film. If you're not into it, don't watch it. I think I'll recommend it to. I won't recommend it to people who aren't really into films, because it's kind of like, well, they would just be like, oh, why did I watch this? I mean, it's in French as well, so that's sort of a bit of a difficult leap for some people as well. Yeah. But if people are into films and they want to watch something that's very different and off the cuff.
Yeah, because I know people who, even in our class, love films but can't get themselves to watch Parasite because it's not English and they can't be asked reading subtitles. Yeah.
It's just sort of it is an interesting film, definitely. If you had to give it a rating out of 10, what would you give it?
6.5, 7. I think it was good, but in a way I don't want to watch it again.
Yeah, I think it's like
it's not as bad as Signs.
Yeah, I like the sort of the filmmaking elements of it.
Yeah,
and I do understand the quality of it, but it's just sort of like it would. I think it's a film that if you like films, you should watch a film like this, and you should sort of understand like this is sort of the vibe that's going on with these films. And I'd recommend watching Uncut Gems again, but like maybe not watch it again. I would probably go for 6.5, 7. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just sort of
It's a good film, and that's whereabouts you would say it's a good film at about a 7.
Yeah.
Anything below a 5 is a naff. But it's
Yeah.
not naff. It's a really good film.
Yeah.
But you just don't want to watch it again. And I think to get it higher, it should be rewatchable. I think.
Definitely. I think it was an interesting film, and yeah, I don't know. It's just a bit weird.
Yeah.
It's that's all I'm going to say about the film.
Yeah.
I'd again, like I said, watch it. But yeah, I think that's about it. I think that's all we've got to say about it, really.
About that, but I think we did mention last week about your pictures.
Yes.
Yeah. So how did that go?
Neither of which got through, which is unfortunate. I think yeah, I think it's I pitched them in a way that I probably shouldn't have pitched them. I think the first film was a political satire that probably doesn't really get students going.
Yeah.
And I think the second one I could have pitched a bit better. But we move. I think.
Yep.
Scripts were chosen. Do I think they were the best ones? Don't know.
Well, I'll tell you this. And it was what my lecturer said, and it was only three out of the 12 films that were chosen, or 3 out of the 11 films that were chosen were script writers. The rest were writer directors.
I think
so nine were writer directors who wanted to direct a film. But,
yeah.
So I think that's unfair on script writers and also directors, people who didn't pitch a script.
Yeah.
Because they only get 3 to choose from now.
Well, I think it's because they had 2 MA students, MA screenwriting students who pitched, and neither of them got through. So take that as we will. Which is interesting. Luke's very flabbergasted by that statement.
Yeah.
But we move. So yeah, hopefully
it's a learning experience.
It's a learning experience. It's definitely a learning experience.
Reflecting over it, you know what to do next time for a pitch.
Yeah, definitely. I learned a lot from it, I think. And I'm glad I pitched.
I think that's a good thing about it then, isn't it? Like, even though you didn't get your film, which is deeply upsetting. Yeah. You can learn from that to pitch again.
Yeah. I learned from it, and it was a good thing. Maybe I'll try and pitch a film like Raw, and see how that goes.
I mean, it didn't even hit budget, so like it cost $3 million to make. It only made 3.1. 3.5 million it cost, and it made 3.1 million box office.
That's depressing.
Yeah.
Not sure how she was allowed to make another film then. I suppose it wasn't Cannes, so it can't be that bad.
Tiffany, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the show about Raw.
Grr.
I think it's called something else as well. But
in France, is it called a different name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
it's called Raw because she eats raw meat.
Yeah, thanks, Colombo. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this show. Watch the film, don't watch the film. I don't care. I'm not your mother. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it.
But I'm your dad.
Yeah, bye.
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 Bye.